when it comes to lowering the drug costs, what does this order actually say, and what are some of the inside details?
This, as you said, is a very big announcement that the president made, big executive order signed today to reduce the cost of prescription drug prices immediately. This is supposed to have effects as soon as possible. So the way this works is the country with the lowest price for a drug, that's the price that pharmaceutical companies will be required to sell that drug at in America. The president has said that these costs of production, of research, of making these drugs is largely being put on American consumers. Even though we only have 5% of the population, we're carrying a large percent of the price of formulating these drugs. And so this goes along with his larger push to stop the United States from being ripped off by foreign countries. And so I think this order makes a lot of sense with his agenda in his second term, as well as actions that he took in his first term, which were pretty similar to this most favored nation policy.
And what's been the response from Democrats? For years, they have claimed, to champion lowering drug costs. Do they still feel that way?
Of course, they all can agree that the one thing that unites the Democrats is opposing anything President Trump does. But there is some disagreement about this executive order, even amongst conservatives, about if this is the best way to go about lowering drug costs, because there are some concerns that it could reduce competition and innovation. But the Trump administration feels very confident it will not have that effect, and that the market, the economy of the drug market is what is broken, and that we need a reset for this, and then we can go back to the more natural way about it. They're not seeing that as price fixing, but people on both sides of the political spectrum are saying that if this is price fixing, that could have a negative effect on competition and innovation.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting, right? You bring up such a salient point that they love championing and getting behind anything that Trump does. Say, oh, we're against it, we're against this. Cure for cancer, oh, we're against it. Oh, lowering prescription drug costs, oh, we're against it. Like, it's just unbelievable. Cleaning up crime in cities and metropolitan centers across the country. No, we don't like that either. We're not for public safety. It just makes no sense. They lose so much credibility, and that's why they lose elections. And we see it here time and time again. These are like bipartisan issues about quality of life and lowering prescription, drug costs.
Absolutely. I think that's really the reason the Democrats are in such extreme disarray, is that they don't have a common message, a mission. The only thing that they have that they're working towards that's their common ground is just challenging everything the president does. And at some point, the voters are going to be tired of that. And I think that they already are. Polls are showing Democrats are very unpopular. There is not a clear party leader because, of course, the majority of Americans did vote to elect President Trump. And they don't want to hear from the Democrat Party just, Trump's terrible all the time and here's how we're fighting Trump. They want to hear some positive ideas, things they're actually doing instead of things they're just opposing.
And what about on the issue of healthcare more broadly? What else do we know about the priorities and defunding Planned Parenthood, which has come up again?
That's a great question. So the Energy and Commerce Committee turned in their markups of the reconciliation bill, and it includes cuts to the abortion giant Planned Parenthood. And the way it does this is it says that an organization which participates in facilitating child sex changes cannot receive taxpayer funding. And Planned Parenthood, a recent live action undercover report showed, is giving out these hormone treatments to teenagers. We know these can have extremely negative sterilizing effects on teenagers, harm growth and development, have long-term effects that they're going to be dealing with throughout their lives, even though they may not be aware of it at the time. And so we know that Planned Parenthood is giving these out. And so that's really what House Republicans are targeting, is making sure taxpayer funding is not going towards these gender transition procedures, in line with President Trump's executive order saying that we don't want any taxpayer support, no government support to these irreversible procedures.
Wow, it's troubling. It's disturbing. And you're right. Like you focus on the term, irreversible procedures. That's what we're talking about. And you're talking about children here. It's child abuse. They're not able, their brains aren't even fully formed to be able to make these kind of decisions, and it's being foisted upon them. For political reasons, and you're supposed to be able to rely on your parents and trust them the most. So it's quite disturbing that this is the state of affairs, but I guess it's a very good sign in the right direction that President Trump is making sure that that is not the case. It's one thing if you're older and you have your parents with you and you're doing your, due diligence on everything, but some of these children that this is happening to are far too young to be able to be going through something like this, and it's very disturbing to me. Just get your thoughts on that.
You're completely right. I think that a common argument we hear is that if someone under 18 isn't old enough to decide to get a tattoo, they certainly should not be old enough to decide to cut off healthy body parts or take medicines, which could potentially make them infertile later in life or cause them bone issues, various other pain throughout their lives. And so I think that really is the crux of the argument that while even though we know biologically no one can really change their sex, sex is given by God at birth and no one can change it. It's in every part of one's DNA. Adults, if they want to harm their bodies, they can make that decision. But children really do not have the mental capacity to make this decision. And that's really proven by these detransitioners that we see, these kids who went to the doctor, they were feeling a little uncomfortable with their bodies just because they were tweens or teenagers. And the doctor told them that the only way that they could be happy again is to go undergo these medical procedures. And then they wake up a couple years later, they've potentially gotten their breast removed, they've taken these hormone treatments, which have these negative effects that we've been talking about, and they realize they've made a huge mistake. And they can go back and live according to their biological sex again, but their bodies are never going to be the same, and they're never going to know what it was like to have a normal, non-medicalized childhood or adult life.